nerds! Nerds!
What is a nerd?
When the outcasts fight back, chaos and laughter become the ultimate revenge. Revenge of the Nerds wasn't just a comedy, it was a revolution. From humiliation to defiance, this is the story of nerds rising, pranks, and a pie that changed everything. And here's where it all begins. The idea wasn't born in a Hollywood boardroom. It was born in the messy, humiliating chaos of college life. Steve Zacharias and Jeff Buhai had been the kids everyone laughed at, shoved aside, and dismissed for being too smart, too awkward, and too different. Instead of letting it crush them, they grabbed those bruised egos and turned them into comedy gold. They didn't just want laughs, they wanted a punch, a declaration that brains, empathy, and individuality could rise above arrogance. The studio expected a crude teen flick full of cliches, but what did they get? Something far bolder, a subversive story that made the underdogs feel unstoppable. Can you imagine being laughed at in class and then seeing that same spirit roar across a movie screen? Filming turned chaotic when the University of Arizona's Greek life protested the script, fearing it mocked them. Director Jeff Canoe calmed tensions, explaining it was about acceptance, not ridicule. Slowly, resistance eased. Real students became extras, their genuine reactions fueling the raw energy of a rebellion unfolding on their own campus. Nerds versus jocks. For real. Things got real when the rivalry bled off screen. The alpha-beta actors, playing the jocks, stuck together partying, laughing, and owning the set like campus kings. Meanwhile, the nerd actors rehearsed alone, mirroring their characters' isolation. Curtis Armstrong later admitted it actually hurt. That divide showed in every scene, especially the pep rally speech, where real emotion, embarrassment, pride, defiance spilled out. It wasn't acting anymore. It was raw truth disguised as comedy. And this part is wild. Robert Carradine didn't just play Louis Skolnick, he became him. To get it right, Carradine actually attended real college classes in full nerd mode, thick glasses, high-pitched voice, awkward posture, and all. He sat in lecture halls, surrounded by real students who had no clue they were part of his research. Some laughed, some whispered, and some ignored him completely. That isolation, that sting of being invisible, it fueled his performance with brutal authenticity. Every awkward smile and every crack in his voice came from that real experience. And that's what made Louis different from every 80s comedy hero. He wasn't just goofy, he was human. But just when the nerds thought they won, Hollywood struck. The first test screening in Las Vegas scored an incredible 85. Audiences laughed, cheered, and stood up clapping. Then came Dallas, and it bombed. Silence. Confusion. People walked out. Fox executives panicked. They slashed the marketing budget, cut back promotions, and gave the film a tiny release. But fate had other plans. College kids found it, shared it, quoted it, and lived it. Word spread from dorm to dorm, and what the studio saw as a throwaway teen flick exploded into a nationwide phenomenon. Turns out, you can't keep a good underdog down.
Dawson, Dudley,
Call me Booger.
Excuse, please, but why do they call you Booger?
And here's something few people know: Booger wasn't even supposed to be memorable. The original script portrayed him as a one-dimensional slob, serving solely as comic relief, but Curtis Armstrong refused to play him that way. He built a whole backstory why Booger dressed like that, why he didn't care what others thought, and what made him tick. He invented the voice, the shrug, the attitude. And suddenly, this side character became something more, a symbol of raw laughing. And Booger was gross, sure, but he was real. He didn't fake it to fit in. That's what made him an anti-hero, long before the term became cool. And this part? Pure movie magic. The hilarious card game between Booger and Takashi totally improvised. No one planned it. The director just let the cameras roll while the two of them goofed around. Their chemistry was so natural, it became a running gag throughout the film. Off camera, they were tight joking, eating together, and pulling small pranks on set. That bond slipped effortlessly onto the screen. You can't script that kind of connection. It's what makes moments live forever. You watch it now, and it still feels spontaneous, fresh, and ridiculously funny. And it is at this point that all turns into absolute enchantment. One of the film's most memorable moments, the talent show, was about heart, not flawlessness. Real live performances by Curtis Armstrong and Robert Carradine were infused with every drop of emotion. Called later, but the energy was actual Timothy Busfield's violin. In the crowd's roar, in the rhythm of the drums, in the unfinished anarchy that strangely worked, you could sense it. That nerd jam was a declaration rather than only a performance. The nerds were just being themselves rather than trying to be cool anymore. The essence of the film became that messy, rebellious truth. You also have to appreciate this section, the famous chuckle that began everything, that uncomfortable nasal chuckle from James Cromwell, entirely unprepared. Cromwell drew it straight from his own experience of nervous laughter during college. It was strange, honest, and immediately unforgettable. What started as a chance on-set scene evolved into the movie's trademark sound, the laugh everyone could impersonate yet no one could fake. That is its elegance. Sometimes the smallest, though, and your things have the biggest influence. You hear that laughter even now, though, and you're back at Adams College. Poindexter, the strolling definition of endearing ineptitude, will be next on our list. Though Timothy Busfield thought it just didn't fit, his name was first meant to be Lipschultz. He reconstructed the character from scratch, uncombed hair, thick glasses that constantly slipped down, and the nervous motions of someone who lived more in his head than the actual world. He transformed into Poindexter, the worried genius everyone knew in their own life. And what's nuts? That little performance, that nervous eccentricity, helped define the contemporary nerd archetype seen in movies and television today. He was the model, not only humorous,
Hey, take it easy. Computer's your friend.
Wasn't meant to interface with the machine.
Well, you're just beginning. Relax.
Judy then arrived as the emotional core of the tale. The studio auditioned notable celebrities, including Sarah Jessica Parker, Joan Cusack, and even Jamie Gertz. Michelle Meyerink had, nevertheless, something the others did not: genuineness. She made Judy warm, inquisitive, and human, rather than acting the part like a stereotype. She gave the film its compassion, balancing all the mayhem and mischief with actual heart. Every gaze she gave Lewis was one where you could feel it. She saw through the braces and celebrities, straight to the individual beneath. The nerd's triumph would not have meant half as much had Judy not been present. And here's a twist that changed everything. Rick Moranis was originally supposed to play Louis Skolnick, imagine that. But when Moranis refused, the door opened for Robert Carradine. And Carradine didn't just fill the gap, he redefined the role. Instead of being timid or slapstick, Louis was confident, proud, and even a little rebellious. He made being a nerd look cool. This shift turned the film from another teen comedy into something timeless. It's crazy to think one casting change could rewrite an entire cultural message, but that's exactly what happened. And here's where things get lost in translation, literally. When Revenge of the Nerds hit Spanish-speaking markets, there was one major problem: the word nerd didn't even exist. Translators had to rename it La Revancha de los Novatos, the Revenge of the Rookies. It lost a layer of cultural satire, that sting of reclaiming an insult. But here's the wild part: audiences still got it. They felt the same underdog energy, the same rush of triumph when the outsiders took control. Even without the word, the emotion crossed every language barrier.
Dad, telephone. I'm busy, asshole. They said it's important.
And this part could have completely changed how we saw the villain. There was a deleted scene showing Stan Gable, the head alpha-beta jock, confessing he'd always been secretly ashamed of being smart. Imagine that. The bully hiding a little nerd inside. It gave him depth, maybe even a touch of redemption. Sadly, Fox cut it, thinking audiences wouldn't care. But traces of that conflict lived on in the sequels, where Stan slowly starts to break away from his image. The irony? The jock everyone feared was just another outcast, pretending not to be one. And now, the sweetest revenge of all real-life success. The movie cost only tiny budget, barely any marketing, hardly any faith from the studio. But once word spread, nerds stormed theaters across America. College campuses turned screenings into parties. The film pulled in over 5 times its budget. The kids who were once humiliated on screen suddenly stood tall, as their story turned humiliation into triumph. Revenge of the Nerds didn't just win the box office, it won a generation. And here it is, the heart of the whole film, shouting it loud from the football field, grabbing the microphone. And I'm proud. That line hit like thunder. It was a movement rather than just a quote. That moment told every youngster who had ever been rejected, insulted, or undervalued, "You matter." It was all something to be proud of: intelligence, clumsiness, and individuality. Years later, people still recall that speech. It was courage rather than comedy.
Dear sirs, thank you for applying to Delta Kappa Gamma. We've gone over your application.
And here's the full circle curve nobody saw coming. Lambda, 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 the Tri-Lambs, that imaginary brotherhood did indeed become actual. The University of Connecticut started a co-ed chapter based on the movie in 2006. Their goal, though, was friendship, fandom, and acceptance rather than pranks and parties. A brotherhood inspired by the same spirit that made the film a legend. Originally a parody, what began to be a living legacy showed that sometimes the joke goes beyond the punchline and transforms into something quite significant. Just as it appeared Hollywood had attempted to transport the nerds to television, Hollywood sought to dominate the big screen. A television pilot for Revenge of the Nerds was broadcast flat jokes with no flair, absolutely bomb. It missed the mark. But years later, the tables finally turned. King of the Nerds debuted on reality television in 2012, hosted by Curtis Armstrong and Robert Carradine themselves. It was poetic justice, actual geeks taking on intellectual and artistic tasks. The underdogs mocked now dominate television. Revenge was whole and exquisite. Still, Hollywood, as always, couldn't resist cashing in. At Emory University in 2007, filming for a full-blown Revenge of the Nerds remake began. 2 weeks in, boom, canceled. The school found the scenario excessively raunchy and tone-deaf for a new age. The project fizzled out, leaving behind half-completed sets and a cloud of letdown. It revealed that the core of the magic of the first was not in its gags, but rather in its heart. You cannot manufacture revolution. Authenticity cannot be reset. The spirit of the original still exists alone.
Frankly, I'm not too wild about this next event, but it has become a tradition here at Adams. The belching contest. Our first of two.
Here is where everything unites the legacy. You're a little college farce. This evolved into a template for commemorating outsiders everywhere. From punchlines to pioneers, heroes of technology, pop culture, and fandoms all around the nerds changed. We could never have gotten Weird Science, Can't Buy Me Love, or even The Big Bang Theory without Revenge of the Nerds. Its DNA permeates every tale, honoring intellect over muscle and uniqueness above popularity. 40 years later, its message still hits home. Never underestimate the ones who think differently. And here's the best part, the legacy lives on. Cast members like Anthony Edwards, Robert Carradine, and Curtis Armstrong still carry the nerd flag proudly. Revenge of the Nerds didn't just entertain, it inspired generations to be unapologetically themselves. Passion always outlasts popularity. So, what's your take? Drop it in the comments, hit like, and subscribe because the Nerds' revenge isn't over yet.